the minute they were on set together, they had such a great chemistry and relationship. They're laughing constantly and fooling around. Like it was a very joyful shoot.
The Pod Generation will premiere in theaters on August 11th. I got a chance to see the film yesterday, but how would you best describe this movie?
Well, I would say it's a satire about uh, the possibility of gestating babies in artificial wombs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because when I was watching it, I was just interested by the way that, how parenting is. You took a look at parenting in the future, in the foreseeable future. But how did you come up with the idea for the film?
Well, it was like a lot of different layers. Like I had a lot of dreams when I was expecting my child, who's now like 13. I
Mm,
had a lot of very strange dreams, and I think it happens to a lot of pregnant women that something opens up, communication opens up in your psyche, and you start to have very strange, beautiful dreams. And I was writing them down, and so I always wanted to do something around those dreams. And then I'm interested in this subject of the commodification of everything, which my first film was about, the extraction of souls and the commodification of the soul. So I
mhm.
think it's always, when you have an idea for a script, it's not one decisive moment. It's like a succession of things that made me want to write this about a couple. First, it was a very big movie that I wanted to make, like Brave New World, very ambitious budget wise. And then I thought this is never going to get made. And then I made it simpler and
Yeah.
just about a couple in New York and that technology. But it's been many years and it evolved. It changed a lot as the years were going. And then I was very interested in artificial intelligence too for the last 4 years. So there's also that aspect of the story that I wanted to put in there. So I guess it's just a lot of different influences. And Brave New World is a huge influence. George Orwell, another documentary by Adam Curtis called The Century of the South was a great influence. He focuses on how marketing has evolved in America since the 30s, and it's fascinating documentary. So yeah, I guess it's a lot of things together.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I understand that. And you talk about the couple, the couple is it stars Amelia Clark and Chiwetel Ejiofor. How is it working with those two? And what did you think about their dynamic working together?
So that was incredible because they had never met before, and
Oh,
from the
really?
minute,
Okay.
yeah, the minute they were on set together, they had such a great chemistry and relationship. They're laughing constantly and fooling around. Like it was a very joyful shoot. And this was still during the pandemic, so we all had
Mm,
masks and we couldn't really hang out that much socially after shooting. But despite all those conditions, I think they had a great time on set, and they really they enjoyed playing that couple. You could feel it, you can sense it in the how they played, and they're just like wonderful to work with. I don't know if it's the British technique of acting, but they're so prepared. It's fascinating to see them work because they work very differently. Emilia is a very intuitive actor, and she tries many things, and Chiwetel knows exactly what he wants to do. And then so you do a few takes, and then he just like gives you a little variation on, but he has a very precise idea.
mhm.
And Emilia to explore more possibilities. And so it was really interesting. I always say that every actor is a bit like a horse with like their own
Mm.
intuition, and you have to like you have to find a way to gallop with them, but like they're all so different and their sensibilities are so different. So there isn't one method of directing. I think it's just you have to adapt to every actor.
And when you talk about Amelia, I understand that she's a producer on the film, and this is her first producing credit, from what I've heard. So, how is it working with her behind the camera and helping and working with her when it comes to bringing this film to life?
Yeah, so she was instrumental when she signed on the film. She said, "Okay, this is going to be my next film." So it wasn't like a soft attachment. Some actors, when you get a big star like this, sometimes it's a curse and a blessing because you have them and they help you put the film together. But then you can always lose them because the bigger movie comes, like a bigger director calls, or
Yeah.
but yeah, was very committed since the moment she said she was going to make this film happen. She was relentless to get on Zooms, knock at all the doors to get the financing, because it's a small independent movie. It looks big on screen, but it's a small movie. And she made it happen. I think without her commitment and dedication and like the energy, I don't know if you've ever met her, but she's so much incredibly positive energy. She's
Yeah.
really funny too. And so she really helped convince financiers to put the money, and was the determination to make this movie made was certainly a game changer for me, to see the movie come to life.
Of course. And with the pod generation, along with parenting, the film focusing on parenting, it also takes a look how one can be pregnant, whether it's naturally or going to the womb center. Do you see a world where couples can become pregnant via some type of version of the womb center in the foreseeable future?
Oh, I'm pretty sure this is going to exist pretty soon.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they've tried, I've seen in Israel, they've tried, I think on a lamb or on mice, and they're going to figure it out. I think right now we're able to save premature baby much earlier than before, and we're able to do the fecundation in vitro. So we just have to figure out the month in between. But this is going to happen. For sure, it's going to happen. And now, I mean, that's the thing of the film, and that's why I made it as a satire, but
Yeah.
it's just an allegory for me. It's the womb, but it could be any technology. And it's just a question of why don't we regulate those things before they happen? Because they're going to happen. And once they happen, we're not going to know what to do with it. And that's what happened with social media. That's what's happening with artificial intelligence right now. Scientists and inventors and creators do those things because they can, and there's no regulation. And then once we have it in our hands, it creates a whole this entire debate and question, ethical debate, philosophical debate, and it's going to be. I don't know what we're going to do. Once this thing happens, is it going to be a curse? Is it going to be a blessing? For sure, it's going to help couples that cannot conceive naturally. And so there's going to always be a positive aspect to any invention, but it's also going to be a dark zone where I don't know if it's going to help women to be more powerful, or if it's actually going to deprive them from, the power of giving birth. And this, I don't have the answer, but it's worth asking the question.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that stood out with this movie for me is the use of AI and really the growth of AI, because, there's one scene or a few scenes where Rachel, played by Emilia Clarke, is talking to a therapist, and it's just an I, and it's pretty much just an artificial intelligence therapist. So when it comes to doing the research for this film, when it comes to AI, what type of research was done to make the world more of an artificial intelligence type of place?
Yeah, I was joking when I was writing that I was researching into the future, which is
Yeah.
a weird thing to do. But I was talking to people in the Silicon Valley, and I was reading a lot about artificial intelligence. And I gave everyone was like, oh, it's a bit far-fetched. This is not going to exist. And then the movie came out at Sundance the same week that ChatGPT was released. And suddenly it became very real and very possible that there would be, a giant eye telling us what to do, analyzing our dreams. So it's the exponentiality of that progress that is pretty amazing. Even when I talk to people, I went to the San Francisco Film Festival, and then I talked to a few people that work in artificial intelligence. They're surprised themselves of how fast it came together. Because a year ago, people were making fun of Altman and the ChatGPT bot that was forming and was a bit ridiculous, and no one took it seriously. And then suddenly it's there, and the next one is going to be even more powerful. And so I think, whenever you write science fiction, that's the beauty of it. And what's scary about it is like it's already dated almost. Like what I've put in the film is the product of like 3-4 years of writing, and then there was COVID, where things got slower. But by the time it came out, I think it was surprising that a lot of these things could already exist today. They're not that far-fetched.
course. And one of the other aspects of the film that stood out for me is nature, because Alvy, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, is a botanist. He teaches students about plants and trees, and he's not really into AI as much as Rachel, because he's all about, being natural and, the environment and things to that nature. So I thought that was really interesting. But how important was it for you to have that as a part of the story, especially with the environment continue to be an issue for the world? And this is something that has gone back, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's a subject that's very dear to me. I love this European philosopher from the 17th century called Spinoza, and he said that the more we think we control nature, the more nature reminds us that it's actually controlling us. And that's exactly what's happening with climate change. We thought we could commodify nature, use it, do whatever we want with it, and we're the master of nature. But actually, nature is much powerful than us. And there is a certain humility, and modesty to learn from our relationship to nature, because we are the product of millions of years of evolution. We come from nature. We're animals that evolved with a consciousness and an intelligence. Does that make us the master of the world and enable us to do whatever we want with nature? That's a big ethical question. And I think we're going to pay the consequences at one point of being reckless with nature. And I think the film was trying to show, like a character like the Chiwetel Ejiofor character with such an utopian. He's a bit of a poet, like he loves his nature, and he realizes the younger generation doesn't understand it because they've never been offered the experience. Like, you can't love something if you haven't experienced that thing. And that's what I've felt as a New Yorker, like that kids were more and more disconnected from nature because they're on their phones or because they haven't been taken to nature. Yeah. And so it's hard to protect something and love something that you haven't been in contact with. And I think so that's the first step. I think if we want to save the nature and the planet, is teach the younger generation to love it, to enjoy it, and not just feel guilty about it. And that's the work that we have to do as adults. So the relationship is not negative, because I feel the kids are just feeling guilty, and they're not, they should just enjoy it while it lasts. And then maybe by having these positive feelings towards nature, they would protect it more.
Of course.
Yeah, I think there's always hope. I mean, if you've seen Ice on Fire, the DiCaprio documentary is wonderful, because the first half you feel very depressed. You're like, okay, we've destroyed everything. And then the second half is all the solutions. And there are many solutions to save the planet. And the beauty of technology is that you can have biomimicry technology that actually imitates what nature is doing to try to, change the course of climate change. So MIT is developing those leaves that can do photosynthesis, but they're artificial leaves. There are those boxes that can absorb carbon dioxide. There's tons of solutions, but it's just to put our minds, like have the mindset to put those solutions together and use the technology for this instead of using the technology for things that we don't really need,
Of course. Yeah, I definitely understand that. And one last question for me before I let you go is, the Pod Generation, as you mentioned, it's a satire, but it also has some great messages. So ultimately, what do you want viewers to take away from the film after watching it?
Well, that's a very, individual question. Everyone takes something different from the film. But I think for me, it's just asking the question, like, how much are we ready to lose or give away of ourselves for convenience? That's the biggest question. And that's the theme of the film. And the egg itself is just an allegory. It's a metaphor. It could be a baby. It could be something else. But it's this thing of convenience. Like, how much every time we get a new technology, do we really want it? Do we really need it? And what are we losing of our humanity every time we sign up for these things? I think that's what I would like people to question.
Well, again, I enjoyed the film. So, Sophie, thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it, and continued success to you.